Hey everyone, hopefully you're having a great day. My name's Andy, my channel's Finding Value. We're going to be looking at some opportunities in gold and silver in terms of technical analysis. We're going to see if we're in an uptrend, downtrend, look at some of these big patterns. I'm looking at it from a kind of a medium-term perspective. I'm looking to see if trend lines are holding, where we're at with respect to these big long-term trend lines. Some of them have broken to the downside. I'll show you what it looks like. We could go into a pullback mode unless we break up back above the trend line. So some are just peeking out, and I'll show you what I'm seeing. So let's jump in here, and I can show you what I'm talking about. So here is gold itself. I threw in a trend line here going back to 2018. Got some hits in here, kind of came down, but if you look at this, we did pull below it a little bit and then came right back above it very strong. So we are in an uptrend. We are still holding on this big trend line and we're above it. So that looks good for gold. Silver is right there testing this big old trend line. I do the trend line on the top point here and then on the bottom point of all these guys. We're still right there. I know today we kind of bounced off it in an upward fashion. But that's what we're looking at. We're looking at this trend line to see if it's holding. If we break below it, I think we're going to see a downward move. If we hold above it, I think we're going to be in a continuation of this uptrend. Here's GDX. It is also playing with this long-term trend line right here. We're starting to get to a spot where if this thing dives lower, we're going to break this upward trend line. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm watching out for. It's up to you what you want to do. You can sit in it for the long-term hold, or if you want to sell out, that's up to you guys. But this is what we're looking at. This is kind of the do or die line that we're at right now for an uptrend versus a potential new established downtrend that could be developing. Now, GDXJ, if you draw it down on this guy, at 35 bucks is where this trend line's kind of at. We're starting to break down on this trend line here. We sold off. We're kind of breaking down here. We could come all the way back to 35 if this thing doesn't muster up some buyers and head higher. So we'll see what happens here over the next week or so. SILJ, same thing. If you draw it across kind of through here, all these points, it did break to the downside. We could see this thing sell off some. We've got some support around 12 bucks, $11, $11, $12 down here. So we could see this thing move lower. It's potential. EXK, you draw it. This is an ascending wedge. It broke to the downside, and we could see lower prices here. This is a kind of a somewhat big of a pattern. You'd look at this guy right here, and that's the projected move. It might be a little bit lower. So we could go lower here in the short term. Sandstorm Gold, we have this upward channel that was developed. You can see COVID broke it out, and then it came right back up, and then we came back out of the channel. And now we're just kind of meandering sideways. Wheat and precious metals, same type of thing. Uptrend, broke the uptrend. Meandering sideways and basing out. We're doing a basing pattern here. We broke this downtrend line here, which is good. So we are in an uptrend still. Actually, we have a trend line here too that just broke to the downside. We're breaking uptrends, downtrends all over the place. This guy, we've got the uptrend for Franco-Nevada. We're still above it and it's still going on. It'd be nice to break through this high in here at 160. If it can do it. Right now we're getting stuck at the 150 level right in here. So some of these we're breaking to the downside. We're seeing some pressure here. Let's see if that pressure continues. I think we could go and do a pretty big pullback in a consolidation mode if we see sellers step in here and push it lower across the board. So it is a possibility that we could consolidate and pull back. If we see strength in the dollar, if we see continued weakness in 10-year yields, so if we have 10-year yields continuing to dive lower, and it was a little bit lower today, if we see copper start to sell off, we see gold starting to break all of its upward trend lines to the downside, we could see a short-term sell-off in the markets. And that's what we're looking for. That's why we're continuing to monitor. Are we in uptrends? Are we in downtrends? What are these things doing? What are the market conditions? Now, I also looked at the Fred housing starts. I know they released that kind of mid-month. The housing starts were higher. So real estate's holding up. Now it's just in the short term, what are these things going to do? I'm not too worried about the short term. I'm more of a long-term holder. As long as the real estate market is continuing to move up, higher prices, lower inventories, or inventories that are relatively low, and housing starts, if they're continuing to increase, I view it as a hold. Just buy it and hold it. I'm not the one trading in and out. I did that before. I didn't like doing that. So I'm buying and holding. If these trend lines, for gold looks good. Silver's the one coming under pressure right now. If we head on higher with silver, I think, the trend line holds and we're still in an uptrend. That's what I'm monitoring. That's what I'm looking for. If all this stuff starts to reverse and head lower, we could see a short-term, good size pullback. We're seeing it across some of the other sectors in the commodities even. But overall, we're going to have pullbacks. It's normal. Copper's been on a ferocious pace. It went all the way up, tagged its highs. It's pulling back a little bit. So that's normal. But if I see everything start to pull back, the entire market, yields start to dive, copper starts to dive, they all start diving, they all start breaking their uptrend lines, then we'll have a discussion on what you guys want to do going forward if we're going to see a short-term pullback here. If you guys like this content, give me a thumbs up. Thanks for listening. This is Finding Value.